everyone, and thanks for joining our Everything MDM webcast series today. We see a number of people still logging in, so we're going to give them another minute or two. Please submit your questions under Q&A so that way we can ensure that we receive them. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. All sessions are being recorded. You will receive an email later today with a survey requesting your feedback on our webcast series, along with the replay links and decks for this week. Thank you. Welcome everyone to our 18th and last installment of our Everything MDM webcast series, brought to you by InterWorks by Windshuttle. Hi, I'm Suzanne Heron, Marketing Programs Manager for the InterWorks line of business for Windshuttle. In today's virtual conference session, Ramesh Prabhala of IntelliTide will discuss MDM implementation styles. He will share the differences between each one and help you determine which style works best for your organization. A little bit about Ramesh. Ramesh, if you want to turn, thank you. Ramesh is the founder of IntelliTide, a data science platforms and services company which uses the power of data management, analytics, and AI to find those hidden treasures in your data. Prior to founding IntelliTide, Ramesh led a number of global MDM and PIM implementations and worked in various technical management, engineering, and consulting roles for some of the world's largest companies. Next slide. Before we get started, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Windshuttle or InterWorks by Windshuttle, I'm going to share a little bit about us. Windshuttle is a specialist in data management and process automation. We offer an all-in-one platform for multi-domain MDM, PIM, and DAM, which means that you can implement multiple domains of data on a single instance of our solution without installing any additional software. Our solution is highly configurable, meaning that it can be implemented with little to no programming, and because of that, we typically offer a very low total cost of ownership compared to other MDM solutions. Our solution can be deployed as a fully managed solution in the cloud, on your own private cloud, or in your own data center. It is highly rated by all the industry analysts, including Forrester, who rated InterWorks as a leader in both PIM and MDM. In fact, we are the only PIM and MDM solution provider that is ranked a leader on both the Forrester PIM and MDM waves. Next slide. Windshuttle has over 2,500 customers across the globe, and we work with the leading manufacturers, distributors, and retailers in most industry verticals, including food and beverage, CPG, apparel, automotive, and home furnishings. It is now my honor to turn it over to Ramesh from IntelliTide. Ramesh, please take it away.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for attending this final session of the webinar series. Good morning and good evening, depending on where you are. So like Suzanne was leading into this session, we'll be talking about some of the key implementation styles, patterns, architectures in the master data management, product information management space. So let's dive right in. Maybe in the end, I'm going to show you a slide on what IntelliTide is all about, just to add on to what Suzanne already mentioned. But we're going to get started with the technical content first. So before we dive into any MDM implementation as an SI, as a professional services organization, us as well as those of you who are customers, adopters of MDM, there are certain questions we need to ask. Should we jump straight into an MDM implementation? Should we just start talking about agile, waterfall? What methodology would we be implementing? Should we just start having conversations with our customers about data model, workflow, business rules, integrations, all that? Or is there some homework that needs to be done before we get into an implementation? Turns out that there is quite a bit of homework we need to do. So we just don't start, as soon as a project is signed, we don't just straight get into an implementation. There's a lot of homework us, as well as the business, the customer needs to do before we even kick off the actual delivery of the project. Before we start talking about implementation architectures and patterns, I would like to show a slide on a couple of basics. For those of you that are new to master data and master data management in this call, and even if you are, even if you have some expertise in master data management, maybe a roundup of a couple of concepts would really be helpful. First, what is master data? I see sometimes even industry veterans fumble at this question. Essentially, master data, first thing, it's plural. It's not singular. Master data consists of attributes or fields. And those attributes are either identifier attributes or describer attributes. So master data essentially in its canonical form, that's what you're seeing on the slide there. It's a function of one or more identifier attributes and one or more describer attributes or descriptive attributes. What does that really mean? The master data associated to me, for example, or you, it's your name, it's your social security number, attributes that predominantly identify you. But that's not it. There are attributes that describe me or you. Our gender, our occupation, our ethnicity, these are attributes that describe us. Together, attributes that identify and describe comprise of what is known as master data. That's for us as a person. But if you switch to a product, it's essentially very similar. Products have serial numbers, they have UPC codes, barcodes, they have names, they have brand names, manufacturer names, and then they have descriptive attributes that describe that product, the weight, the color, and other types of specifications, right? So that's master data. If you have master data, you need to treat it in a certain way. That's the role of master data management. What does an MDM really do? Functionally, an MDM improves data quality, master data quality. It creates a single source of truth, or what is known as a golden record in the industry. It enriches your data. But what does these lead to? What benefits do they provide? Ultimately, an MDM, it cuts costs, labor costs, it manages risks, it improves productivity, it can accelerate go-to-market for your products, it can improve the efficiency of your processes, and ultimately it improves decision-making. Those are the benefits of an MDM. So now that we know, at least at a conceptual level, what master data is and what MDM is, can we go into the implementation? Well, not yet. Before we begin, there's still a few things we need to discuss with our customers. First, before we get to an implementation, we need to attempt to know the business, our customer's business. What type of business do they do? What type of business are they in? Are they a distributor? Are they a manufacturer? Are they a retailer? Are they e-com business? What do they sell? Do they sell apparel, shoes, jewelry, industrial equipment, books, or are they Amazon? They sell everything. What do they sell? And what is their business model? Are they a B2B company? Are they B2C? Do they work with vendors? Do they work with distributors? What's their revenue model? What is their vision? Is there a transformation in business model that they are envisioning? So all these are questions we need to ask upfront before we start implementation, because this influences the pattern, the architecture, and certain implementation models that we select. The other thing we need to remember is MDM is a business solution ultimately. So it's of the business, it is for the business, even though it could be implemented, and it many times is implemented by the IT. It's maintained or supported by IT. In fact, if you look at the professional services organization of Enterworks or an SI like IntelliTide, we have a mix. We have functional people, and then we have the technical people. They work together. The functional people work with the business, and then they pass the baton on to the technical people who come and implement and configure the solution. But ultimately, you're working with the business, you're working to achieve their goals. We need to remember that. Okay, now that we have kind of this overview, let's jump into some of the implementation styles. These are what I'm calling the traditional implementation patterns or styles, and there are 4 of them. And like I promised, if you look at the LinkedIn and all the promotion around this webinar that we have been doing, I promise that I'm going to be introducing a new one today, but that will come in later in the presentation. Let's take a look at the first one. It's called registry. It's a very simple pattern. The product introduction, product or any domain, any product, customer, vendor, whatever domain, the data around that domain is being authored in your source systems. Those source systems can be ERP, it can be SAP, it can be a customer relationship management system, or it can be something else. That data flows into MDM, where it's cleansed, where deduplication of records happen. Essentially, a single source of truth system is created within MDM, and that data then flows outbound into your e-commerce or your print catalog, or into a data warehouse system for reporting and whatnot, right? It's very simple flow. Source systems, data flows into an MDM for cleansing. Once the cleansing happens, it goes outbound. And remember this traffic, this is a one-way traffic. The data does not flow back. That's your registry. And keep the questions coming. If I'm going a little too fast, I would love to answer those questions in the end. The second pattern, it's almost an extension of registry. It's called consolidation. The data flow is very similar to a registry. What's different about this pattern is the purpose of the pattern, the purpose of this architecture. It's essentially for reporting purposes. It's almost an enterprise data warehouse. Your MDM acts as a high data quality enterprise data warehouse. So once again, data is authored in the source systems, that can be your SAP, ERP, or whatever. The data flows into an MDM where it's cleansed, and then there is outbound. But the purpose of your MDM data is reporting and analytics. Some of you might remember the hype around data lakes. Last 2 years, a couple of years back, there was a lot of hype around data lakes. Unfortunately, it did not catch up because, as some of us predicted, just turns out just throwing data into a warehouse with no quality checks and just throwing terabytes of data would not be helpful even for a PhD analyst, because the data is sprinkled all over, the data quality is bad. It's difficult to maintain relationships when you're throwing just terabytes of data into a store. So think of it as a managed data lake, right? It's a data lake, but with a high quality data residing in it. So it's actually of some use to analysts. That's consolidation pattern. The third traditional pattern is what is known as the coexistence pattern. Now here, the authoring of the data, the new product introductions, product updates still happens in your source systems like your ERP. The data then flows one time, the first time, into MDM, where it's curated, deduped, and a single source of truth is created. Then the data flows back into your source system. That golden record that you're created in MDM is synced up with your source systems. And that's an ongoing activity. More data comes into ERP, it comes into MDM. MDM, it gets deduped, it gets cleaned, flows back into the source system. There is a continuous synchronization process of quality data between the source system and the MDM. And obviously there are the outbound destinations, again, your websites or whatever from MDM. But remember that continuous sync process is what defines the coexistence. Now, there are a lot of benefits to this because there's high quality data sitting here, there's high quality data sitting here in the source systems. But remember, there's one drawback. The source systems, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the source system to maintain that quality and keep it in sync with MDM. And that's not a trivial task. So a lot of our customers have attained this stage where there is quality data in the source systems as well as the MDM, but it could be a little bit of a struggle to get to that point. The final pattern, traditional pattern that I'm going to introduce today, it's called the centralized architecture or centralized implementation style. In the industry, some people also call this transactional style. I don't like to use the word transactional because it gives the impression that you're actually bringing in transactional data, which is not entirely true. I really prefer to call it centralized. Now, in this state, this is very simple. If you can compare it with the previous patterns I was showing you, this diagram is a much smaller diagram. The reason for that is it's related to the coexistence style in the fact that initially the data was authored in your ERP and your other source systems. Once you bring it into MDM and you cleanse it, from that point onwards, you're aspiring the authoring of your data to happen in MDM, not in your source systems. And then the data, cleansed data, goes into your source systems, is syndicated out to your destinations. That's why if you look here, in the previous slides, I always call this source systems. Here, I'm saying this is a destination too. So your ERP started off as a source system, ultimately turns into a destination because there's no data being authored here anymore. The data is actually, the master data is being authored in your MDM. This is what I call really the zenith of MDM. This is the, if any company that has attained this level of competency, has adopted, reached the centralized implementation pattern, I typically refer to them as the nirvana state. You have attained MDM nirvana. That's really the goal, that's the aspiration goal of MDM, is to become the source of truth, the source of authoring. It's what we aspire to achieve. But the reality of the situation is it is not as easy to achieve. It's not a trivial fact to get to this state. I know a few companies have, but a lot of the bigger ones are aspiring to get to this state. So those were your 4 traditional patterns. I threw a lot of concepts. So I look forward to the questions. If there's more clarification you need on any of these patterns, traditional patterns, I would love to answer them. So once we get past the patterns, the traditional patterns, today, like I promised before, and we have been marketing this, I'm going to be unveiling a new pattern. But before I do that, I need to set the stage for it. The MDM space has been undergoing a revolution. When I started MDM a few years back in 2011, 2012, MDM was like this, a high quality master data system. Data would be coming in from your SAP, from ERPs, from Salesforce and other sources. Data would be cleansed, and then data would go to outbound destinations. The outbound destinations would be the website that the enterprise was selling through, the print catalog system, maybe a retail management system, maybe a reporting system, and so on. The goals, like I mentioned in the few slides back, were to reduce costs, manage risks, improve the productivity, accelerate go-to-market, improve process, and improve decision making. These goals still remain. The fundamentals of MDM, how data comes in and how it's syndicated out, still remain. What changes, or what is changing, is the fact that e-commerce is attaining more and more and more importance. So you still are syndicating to print catalog. Companies are still printing catalogs. They're still selling to their website. And those outbound systems still remain. But when e-commerce was one of the many channels that was consuming MDM data, today it is the primary driver of MDM. And if you look, and that reflects in the goals. So all your goals that I mentioned here still remain, but growth is a huge goal now. So companies are looking to leverage master data, monetize it, and make money, grow their revenue, grow their profitability. That has led to what I'm going to be unveiling, the new pattern, and I'm calling this the e-syndication pattern. So look at this diagram. All the patterns that I mentioned before apply. You could use a registry pattern, you could use coexistence, you could use centralized. Does not matter, because that's not what drives the e-syndication implementation pattern. What drives is the part here, the online marketplaces. So now you're trying to syndicate your MDM data to eBay, to Kroger, to Amazon, Walmart, and a multitude of other channels. You're really trying to sell to various e-com marketplaces. Before it was probably your own website. Now it's your website in addition to these established marketplaces. That's what's driving this pattern. That's what is driving the vision around MDM. Now, there's a challenge here. It's not as easy to syndicate data to eBay and Amazon and all these channels. The reason is there's a lot of orchestration. Each one has its own authorization and authentication mechanism. Each one has its own different mechanism to set up stores, your online stores on those channels. And then there is a part where you will have to map your hierarchies to their hierarchies, your attributes to their attributes, your categories to their categories. So there's a lot of orchestration that needs to happen. And that's not a trivial task by any means. That's why there is this block in between. There are these APIs and gateway providers that essentially manage that orchestration. So a couple of examples, we are working with a couple of companies that provide this API. Products Up is one of them, Benzi is another one. So these companies, these are essentially like middlewares. They transform the data, MDM data sitting in your MDM store, to these online syndication channels. That's the e-syndication pattern. Now there are certain rules that need to be built, orchestration rules, all of that happen between the MDM and the API. Meaning, in your MDM, when you probably had one hierarchy before, that hierarchy that maps to your own website, today you might have to have multiple hierarchies. One for Walmart, if you're selling on Walmart, one for Amazon, if you're selling on Amazon, and so on. And then you have to have those rules that map from one category to other. You have to have those rules that validate your data sitting in MDM to the validation rules that they expect, and things of that nature. That's all being managed in your MDM and those API gateways. That's your e-syndication pattern. And if those of you that attended Rusty's talk yesterday from Pivot Tree, he mentioned this in brief, but going forward, you're going to see more and more of this pattern emerging. Now, what are the reasons that this pattern is gaining in popularity. One, like I've said all along, e-commerce is becoming a pivotal sales channel for pretty much every company out there. All our customers are looking into how do we syndicate our data? How do we sell online more and more? Business models are morphing, transforming from B2B to B2C. That's especially being precipitated by the crisis we are having today. Every customer that was selling primarily to B2B, to stores, to retail stores, to other distributors, is now asking, how can I deliver my item, my product directly to the consumer? Because we are living in a world where you cannot go to a store as much as you used to before. So that's what they want to leverage. As the world is moving from B2B essentially to B2C channels or business models, people are asking, how do I leverage MDM to sell directly online? Here's a quick slide on what I just alluded to, e-com being as popular as it is, and it's only going to go raise in popularity. In 2010, 6.4% of all US sales was e-com, 6.4%. Today, 2019, 16% is e-com sales as a percentage of total US sales. And in 2020, so far, again, accelerated by the crisis, in March, there was a 25% increase in e-com sales. So all those traditional sales channels, the traditional way of doing business are getting disrupted. We're looking at more and more online sales, e-com sales, B2C sales. Some of the features of this e-syndication pattern, there's been a progression. There's going to be a progression from single channel, your own website, for example, to multiple online channel sales. You could be selling to all and even more of these channels. I have had customers that are looking to sell to 50 channels. I've had customers who are looking to sell to 15. So this is only going to grow the number of online channels that customers are looking to sell into. A radical thought. One of the features I think that's going to happen is some data quality can be compromised for speed. If this is a very radical thought, I want to switch to, I'll tell you why I came up with this. I have an example here. This is an Amazon website. Look at this product. It's a men's polo shirt, essentially. And look at the features. This is all master data, by the way. The product description, the product name, the brand name. This is all the features of this product. All of this is master data. If you look at part of this data, product description, it says here, there's a tagless backneck. While you're doing your quality checks, if you miss this out, is it going to be a big deal? Probably not. You're probably, the fact that you're going to lose a sale just because you don't have this written here, it's not going to be a big deal, I think. However, if you spend so much time, if this product spends so much time in MDM, because you kept it there to do hundreds and hundreds of quality checks for all those 10, 15 channels that you're trying to sell into, and your product syndication is slow to a point that it takes you a few weeks or months to get this product online into Amazon, there is very big chance that this style is going to go out of fashion and no one is going to even look at this product. By the time it comes online, the market's already moved on. So it's okay, it's perfectly okay to compromise some quality to accelerate your go-to-market. Now remember, this really depends on industry by industry. I'm talking about a retail specific scenario. However, if you were the seller or distributor of certain electronic products or industrial products, for example, where your product go-to-market acceleration is not a primary driver, your quality, your focus on data quality and the speed of go-to-market is much slower. And in fact, you should not compromise your data quality at all. For example, look at this. If I was buying a Philips Norelco, this shaver, and if I did not see this, the automatic voltage conversion of 100 to 240 volts, if you left that out as one of your attributes of this product, there's a good chance I'm not going to buy this product. The reason is a good percentage of shoppers who are looking to buy this product, remember, are international travelers. And I'm an international traveler. When I buy this product, I'm not looking to use it just in US, I'm looking to use it in those countries that don't support 120 volts power. Majority of the countries in the world are 240 volts power. So I need to see this. So if you miss that out, you have lost a bunch of your customers, right? So that's a trade-off that companies need to make when they're thinking through their situations. Balance your quality for the need for speed, and that's going to be a key part of this e-syndication pattern. Another feature, I think analytics is going to attain a massive significance. When you're selling to 50 channels, you want to see where your products are, how they are doing, where they're selling more, and then make your adjustments accordingly. Final feature, as MDMs evolve, MDMs are going to evolve too to support this pattern, this implementation style. As I just mentioned, there's going to be channel-specific selections you will have to make. There are going to be channel hierarchies. There's going to be channel-based content. All of those rules, features will need to be built into MDM. And so it's going to drive the evolution of MDMs itself. Okay, so that was all about the implementation styles, the 4 traditional ones and the 1 new one that we just unveiled. Before we wind up, there's some data model patterns as well that I would like to speak to. If you're an implementer, there's certain things you still need to take into consideration, apart from those styles that I just mentioned. There are different data models or data model patterns that we take into consideration as an implementation entity. There is this 3-level parent-child pattern, especially applies to retail, apparel, footwear. You have a parent product and then you have its variants. Level 1 variants, level 2 variants. I'll illustrate this with an example. Let me go back to this product. You see the style? This is a style. This is a polo shirt. It comes in different colors. That's your variant. One shirt comes in all of these colors, and each of these colors comes in different sizes. There's a medium, there's small, there's extra large, and so on. So each style comes in different colors, and each of that color comes in different sizes. That's an example of your 3-level parent-child relationship pattern. So there are attributes at this level that flow down to the level 1 variant, and there are attributes at this level that might flow down to the level 2 variant, and then there will be attributes at this level as well. The other pattern we see is the 2-level parent-child. This is examples of this are bikes, maybe kitchen and bathroom faucets, plumbing equipment from plumbing products, and so on. An example of that, look at this bike. This bike is an example of a 2-level pattern. There is the product or item at the top level, and it comes in essentially 2 colors. Does not have any sizes. It comes in a blue and a red color. That's the example of a 2-level parent-child pattern. And finally, we see the single entity pattern. It has no variants, no colors, no sizes, It's all by itself. All your attribution is at this level. Nothing inherits down to any other level because it's not. The examples of that could be books, building machines. There are other important considerations. Know that pretty much every single time we see products or items or customers, whatever domain you're in, each of those entities have relationships many times, not always. Examples of a relationship could be a kit package, a cross-sell, upsell. If you are using both vendor domain and product domain, there could be a vendor to item or vendor to product relationship. Relationships exhibit a certain pattern based on the particular industry. Apparel industry has its own relationships, for example. The electronic industry has its own patterns. So we need to keep that in mind. Always use a staging and production containers or repositories, as it's called in the EnterWorks world. Staging is where you do your work in progress as implementation partners or entity. We always have these multiple repositories. The work in progress items are essentially entered into the staging repository. Once all the attribution is done, quality checks are passed, that's when the item is promoted to a production container. That's where the syndication really happens from. We need to remember that I have seen a few implementations where this pattern was not followed and it led to some problems. Workflows. We need to remember to keep workflows simple. Workflows have a pattern too. Again, depending on the industry, manufacturing industry versus retail industry versus e-com industry, there are different workflow patterns. Design your workflows according to those patterns, or your workflow will end up in a very complicated stage. If we have some time, and I think we do, you're coming up, we just crossed the half-an-hour mark. I have one last slide to show you, one last topic to cover. I thought I would probably skip it if I don't have the time, but luckily I do. When I talk about data quality and use in all those 5 patterns that I showed you, I kept saying MDM creates a single source of truth. It manages, it not only brings data in, but it enhances the data, creates a quality master record. So this happens in a few ways. There are business rules, there are workflows, there's data governance, there's various things that improve the quality of the data. But one such feature, and important feature, is match merge. I thought I would just focus on this maybe a couple of minutes just to give you a high-level overview of what match merge is conceptually. So imagine, I'll illustrate this with an example. So imagine there is this guy called John Smith. He's a patient, like me, probably not a very young person. He goes to a hospital, he goes to his local hospital system a few times a year to get checked up. Now, he does not go to the same hospital every single time. It just so happens that occasionally he goes to the main hospital. Sometimes he visits the branch. Sometimes he visits the ER. Every time he goes to a different location of the hospital, they're registering him again and again. So ultimately, in their database, it ends up in such a state that there are multiple records of the same John Smith. By the way, this example, this is not what I'm making up. We have done some work in healthcare, and we see this problem of duplication every single time. We see this in every MDM customer on the product domain as well. That's why there is MDM in the first place. So how do you, so the challenge now is, how do you identify the duplicates? How do you create that single unique record from 10, 15, 100 of these John Smith records? That's where the matching part comes in. So what do you first do? What MDMs do, they have these algorithms, tools that essentially do a search on John Smith, the name, collect all the records that look similar to John Smith, and apply a weight to the attributes of John Smith. Now, John Smith, this customer can have 100 records. Not all of them qualify for matching. You have to basically pick and choose what attributes you would like to qualify for the matching criteria. In this case, I'm looking at SSN, date of birth, and address. So the matching algorithms, what they do is they look at all of these records, they assign a weight to the attribute, and based on that weight, they come up with a score. So on the right side, what you're essentially looking at is this record, the first one, it has a 90% match score. The reason for that could be that it has SSN. It's a positive identification, but the other records don't. Based on the attributes, based on the content, you're going to assign the matching algorithms assign a score. The second one has a score of 85. The third one has a score of 80. Now here, what you can say to the tool, when any record that's above a score of 80, consider them to be the same record, and then merge those records. So the first three that have a score of 80 and above, I'm merging them into one unique golden record. That's why the color here is gold. That's my golden record. Now, what happens if there are records that don't attain that score of 80? For example, this one, it has a missing first name. It has a bunch of missing attributes. So the matching algorithm is telling me the score is only 50. In this case, what I can choose to do two things. I can say this is not a John Smith. This is probably a separate, a different record, a different person altogether. Or I can say, well, I want to manually inspect this record. I want to take the call as a human, whether this is the same John Smith or not. So that's what I do in this case. I choose to inspect this manually. So that's a very quick conceptual idea of how match merge works. There's a lot to it. It's a deep technical topic. But again, if you have questions around it, I would love to talk to you. Reach out to me. So that was the end of the technical content. I'm glad this is one of the few webinars where I was able to hit this on time. Usually I always go over. At a glance, IntelliTide, we are into 10 verticals. We have a lot of Fortune 500 consulting experience. We have done more than 50 PIM and MDM rollouts in our life. All our solution architects have 8 years or more of experience, data architects as well as MDM architects. We operate in 3 continents, and we are proud to have 100% customer satisfaction rating. I think some of our customers are in this call. We are into master data management. We are also into analytics, business intelligence. We do a lot of e-com syndication. This is becoming a huge area of focus for us. We are into enterprise integration services, digital transformation. We also do hosting and managed services. That's IntelliTide Corporation. Feel free to reach out to me at hello@intellitide.com. We are a proud Enterworks certified partner. In fact, the dedicated partner. We are the premier Enterworks partner. So Suzanne, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you for questions.
Great, thank you, Ramesh, and a great job. I think several people have learned a lot during this session, as I see quite a few questions coming in. I especially like the new implementation style that you announced with the focus of being on balance your quality versus the need for speed. So I thought that was very impressive and intelligent and educational for our audience today. First question, is the mastering of information for MDM implementations supposed to include business contextual information as well? For example, if they have a standards for address data structure and its format, but some business units require their specific way to capture and use it, what's the point of mastering something that cannot be reconciled among its users?
Yeah, good question. Yes, business context is important. I didn't understand the part about reconciliation between the users. I think it's reconciliation between the systems, the source systems that hold or store that part of information. Remember that transformation is a big feature of any MDM. So data that comes in has to go out as well. Either, like I said, for example, in the coexistence and coexistence pattern, you see that data flows back into the source system. So there's a transformational piece that's part of all of this, right? So the address could have been stored in the source system any way you want it. But in MDM, there's a structure to it. There's a data model. It's typically an address is a good example. We store it in what is known as table attributes or complex attributes, because an address has its street, it has zip code, it has city, it's all of that. So essentially, these are sub attributes of the main address attributes. So when we reconcile that address between MDM and the source systems or the destination systems, there is a transformation that happens. That transformation could happen either in MDM before the data flows out, or there could be another component sitting in between that does the transformation. Maybe there's an Excel or API integration that gets the data out of MDM, does the transformation, and then sends it into your destination system. Either way, there's a transformation piece that happens that takes care of making sure that these are two sets of data are in sync.
Great, thank you. Another question, with coexistence, once it's written by MDM, can the author still override the value?
Yes, that in coexistence, that is exactly the case. That's why it's a little more complicated than it sounds like. So for example, you have 10 John Smiths in your hospital's EMR system, for example, or I have 10 products of the 10 product records for with the same serial number. Essentially I'm deduplicating that record. So the deduplication happens in MDM, and the single source of truth record goes back into your ERP. The other 10 records that were duplicated before, you're either archiving them or you're deleting them. But going forward, your single source of truth record becomes that one record that came in from MDM. So when John Smith next time gets updated, not in MDM, but in the source system, that update is happening on that one golden John Smith record. Now, it's very well possible that there's another duplicate record of John Smith that gets created, but at this point, both those go into MDM, gets cleansed, deduped, the single John Smith record goes back into the source system. That duplicate record that was existing before is at this point either deleted or archived.
Great, thank you. Another question, how do we know which implementation style suits best for our organization when we're working on a multi-domain MDM project?
Great question. This really speaks to the homework aspect. That's why I didn't go straight into implementations. I spent couple of slides on talking about the homework that we need to do. And that homework is essentially where you're learning, why did your customer purchase MDM in the first place? This is what you're having those conversations with your customer. What is the driver? What is their business model? Are they looking to do analytics? Are they looking to retire certain source systems, sunset them, and create MDM as the golden source of truth? All that plays into the homework that we are going to do, and then we come up with the right approach. Now, remember that approach could be progressive. I always want to create I always want my data to be authored in MDM. I always want to get to that centralized pattern as soon as I can. But is it really practically possible? No, because there's a lot of investment that has happened in the ERP systems. Uh, there are other systems, there are other solutions, apps that feed off ERP. So changing all of that to point to MDM, that's not a trivial task. That's not going to happen in a day. So it's a transformational thing. It gradually has to happen where you attain that state. But until you get to that point, um, there's a journey that we all need to travel. But in the beginning, you're really looking to learn the drivers of why your customer has purchased MDM and how you can get it to the aspirational goal that ultimately they want to get to.
Do you recommend a specific implementation style for a specific domain? And if you're in the process of a multi-domain MDM project, can you have multiple implementation styles for that project? For example, coexistence for product and consolidation for supplier, etc.
So there are two parts to this question. The first part, is there a specific implementation style by domain? No. You can apply coexistence or centralized to vendor domain, to product domain, to whatever domain you want. So it is not specific to any particular domain. They all apply to pretty much all domains. It's the business drivers or what drive the implementation style, not the domain. Part two of that question, you can, in theory, yes, you can have two MDM repositories or two MDM platforms or solutions, one for vendor domain and one for customer domain. One can have a coexistence pattern, and the other can have, for example, a registry style. In theory, you could do that. I don't know why you would practically do it though. Reason being, first thing is it's expensive. Second is if your data is siloed, your vendor's data is siloed in one MDM and your product data in another MDM, that kind of defeats the purpose. You want those relationships. You want data to coexist. Your business is situated around using both sets of data. So operationally, it does not make much of a sense. But in theory, yes, you could do it if you wanted to.
Okay, great, thanks. How do you get the business team more involved in MDM projects? Typically, IT handles these.
Yeah, so going back to what I said, it's for the business, by the business. It's really for the business. It's implemented by IT, right? Or technology, not necessarily IT. It could be maintained by IT though. So there's a good collaboration, but remember, everybody does it differently. But Enterworks believes in this and IntelliTide believes in this. We get the business into the game, so to speak, as early as possible. Right from the requirements gathering, the solution design, the functional phases of the project, the business is heavily involved. At that point, the customer's IT is almost like a spectator. They are the support organization. It's really business that is driving it. And the other thing we believe in, even during the configuration implementation of MDM, we do a lot of show and tells. We give access to the business to the system so they can adopt the system faster and they can learn. Many times what we see is MDM is kind of a disruptive force. We see customers learning about themselves as much as we are learning about them in the beginning, right? Because various organizations are all, they all collaborate, they all congregate in the same meetings and sessions. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens. So business learns about themselves and we learn about the company and the business as well. So take the business as your champion from the beginning, engage them, I think the outcome of MDM is going to be much better that way. At least we have seen our success rate go very, very high when we adopt that approach.
Thank you. We're coming up to the end of the hour, so we're just going to take 1 to 2 more questions before wrapping it up. So somebody asked, what they're hearing is to have a multi-domain implementation, somebody must implement a consolidated or transaction style of MDM. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that question again? Especially the first part, I missed it.
Sure. They're saying that what they've heard so far during this presentation is in order to have a multi-domain implementation, that organization must implement a consolidated or transaction style of MDM. Is that correct?
No, not really. Again, it's a journey. What we have typically seen is the registry pattern that happens first and slowly it transforms, morphs into coexistence, and then ultimately the centralized. It's again, like I said, there is the aspirational part, and then there is the realist, the reality of it, the reality of the situation. So no, it's not really true to say that until you reach the nirvana stage, which I call, which is really the centralized pattern, it's only then that you have a true MDM, at least not in my perception. You could have a coexistence style and still claim to have a true MDM.
And how many customers have you seen in your implementations that have achieved this centralized implementation style?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A few of them have. Many of the small, I don't have an exact number, but many of the smaller, medium businesses have already achieved it. The struggle is with the larger businesses. Remember, there's a lot of investment that has gone into the current solutions and applications that they have. There's a lot of cost associated with it. So just having applications that talk to your ERP, for example, to switch them off and tomorrow have them, point to MDM and integrate with MDM, that's not a trivial task by any means. That could be it could be expensive, it could be time consuming. So it's a progression. I've seen a few enterprises reach that stage. The big companies, though, they are still in the process of getting to that stage. Some have, but I can tell you not a whole lot.
Okay, great, thanks. Can you advance to the next slide?
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Ramesh, for a great session, and thank you to everyone who has attended our multi-week webcast series today. If you did miss any of the previous sessions, please feel free to go to our conference link where you can download the playback. As a reminder, don't forget to complete the survey and let us know what you thought of our webcast series, as well as offer suggestions on topics for future webinars. Thank you again, and everyone have a great day.